My Julian Assange document, just reading on, we're on page, you can see on the bottom right here, we've got page 6 of 339. I'm not going to be able to do all of this document, so I'll just pick out some bits, hopefully. So this podcast, it was some details that I had here confirming or suggesting, that Assange was part of a family occult that was linked to MK Ultra, etc. Now, on the right, that person that I was emailing at the beginning here with connections to Stella Assange, we then start WhatsApping. And I find the evidence in relation to the adrenochrome, and this is now showing correspondence in relation to the adrenochrome. And they say it's futile focusing on adrenochrome, Gary. Trust me, it's old news. I'm told you're losing audience because of it. It's generating money to harm people by evicting them from their homes and committing serious financial crimes. So it's vital to focus on the financial crimes and illegally property and land grab happening every 25 minutes. A lot of people are already screaming loud for children, at most who have ended up dead as a youngish age. Okay, so remember, this is the person I was directed through via someone close to me. And the reason they're mentioning evictions is because of Trevor Meelan was part of that group. So this is trying to convince me to keep away from the adrenochrome. On the left there, they then make reference to the Hampstead child abuse inquiry, okay, via Sabine McNeill. This is very important. So we now have a link to this person, to the fraud where I was directed through, to Lloyds Bank, to the international government fraud, via this person, to the Hampstead child abuse inquiry, Stella Assange, okay, all linking together now. We know that's all going to be linked via these emails and these connections. So here we are. Sabine ended up in jail for 9 years. I helped her get out on a tag and so on. So it's actually a personal connection now to somebody who was personally in contact with Stella Assange. Okay, so I'm not going to read all of this. They then say, I'm on the bottom left there, I'm trying to protect you from harm. Drop the adrenochrome. I responded, drop the adrenochrome to save myself and let the children die, ? They put, no one can save the world. I knew all about the adrenochrome. They said in 2016, none of us can save the world. And then they go on to try and use the Jesus, because they know I'm a Christian, okay? Jesus said, work on your own salvation. I put here, on the right there in the green, are you suggesting I drop the adrenochrome to save myself and let children die? So then they're working on the Jesus side of things to try and convince me to drop it. So what this is now saying is they know, and therefore we have to assume that Stella Assange and Julian know how significant the adrenochrome is, and they're not addressing it deliberately. Okay? Let's move on. I put, because I find this very alarming, I put, you must be compromised. They say you aren't saving children by this approach. That's a delusion. They then go on and mention Trevor. Remember, we mentioned Trevor. Putting too many constructions on things without proof will only waste time and alienate you from others. You can't keep accusing everyone. Even Trevor and people are turning away from listening to you as they had been. Well, no, it's because there's connections to the adrenochrome. I put on the left there, my soul is not for sale. They then mention the Hampstead child abuse inquiry. Have you watched the whistleblower Hampstead kids videos 2014-15? No one's soul is for sale. This isn't only about one person. Be less frantic. Don't say things you can't prove. I haven't. I never have. Talk is cheap. Opinions are worthless and meaningless. Learn about raising vibration. Okay, now I'm finding a lot of people are saying this, that I'm finding links to. Just raise your vibration. They then go on to say, you can do more good setting up a prayer retreat and arranging a yoga class or uplifting event than what that's what people need. It isn't, I mean, it's quite blatant, isn't it? They're trying to steer me away from the adrenochrome, which is only highlighting how serious the adrenochrome is. It isn't our mission to save the world. We're not here for that, but we can uplift and heal self and consciousness. Healing radiates at speed of light to all. Please take this as the spirit is given in. They then put a little video of a clip of somebody that was on my Telegram on the left there, and they were trying to get me to publicise their videos. Those videos would have undermined what I was doing completely, and I think they knew that. So, so clearly trying to get me away from the adrenochrome. So, of course, that drew me into the adrenochrome even more, that it's actually one of probably the root cause of most of the problems we're seeing. On the right here, around the same time, 27th of July 2024, I then receive an email from a politician coming in, okay, who's from a new politician coming in through the Reform Party. I've got evidence suggesting who that MP is now, and they're also linked to the fraud. But they sent me an article in relation to Julian Assange around the same time. And it goes on about Julian Assange, and I'll read some of it to you. Julian Assange single-handedly kick-started the greatest awakening of the human race since the beginning of the time by revealing to the entire world how the US government is so evil. It is hard to comprehend. The WikiLeaks files revealed, for example, how Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are involved in systematic child abuse among countless other crimes. So is Donald Trump. Okay, he's linked to the same system of fraud that is used by Hillary Clinton. I haven't researched Obama, but of course, I'm sure there will be links there. On the right there, the leaked emails reveal how they participate in parties involving children. After releasing this kind of information to the world, it is nothing less than a miracle that Julian is still alive. This raises a significant question concerning what really happened to him. Was he truly arrested by the cabal, or is he being protected by the good side? Okay, so this is trying to get me to believe in Trump. On the right there, I'm not going to read all of this. It says, another element of powerful hope is the release of Julian Assange is that he is not being released to work as a lonely journalist again, but this time he is supported by the largest military and intelligence operation of all time to take down the evil in our world. This is extremely exciting. Well, I've already done research surrounding that. You had Pascal Najjardi working for Space Force, supposedly. So many people have come in and tried to deviate me into believing in what's going on, and then I'm finding evidence exposing the truth in all of it, and it's all linked to this fraud and child trafficking. In fact, Pascal Najjardi and Space Force link almost immediately to the company I was part of, Export Manor Freehold Limited, or those within it, which are linked to the intelligence agencies and are a huge part of what we're seeing in relation to the child trafficking and fraud. They removed me, don't forget, from that company, Export Manor Freehold Limited, as a director because I was refusing to file out accounts using forged bank documents. Everyone needs to realise, okay, none of what I'm exposing is a coincidence. This is, whether you want to call it biblical, it's most certainly spiritual. It's very clear that I've been placed specifically through my faith to acquire this evidence to get a transition into a new world. There's no other explanation. That's what's guided me the whole time. There's nothing special about me, significant about me at all. Everything is through my faith that has directed me to get us to truth, transparency, and trust. Reading on, I've explained the detail in the past how there was hope for the world. There's an unprecedented divine military intelligence operation ongoing globally, led by deeply devoted followers of Jesus Christ. So they're trying to get me entrapped into this, believing them again, to save humanity from the satanic cabal. The military intelligence operation has been exposing to the entire world the deeply nefarious and totally criminal, the CIA, FBI, DOD, and then various other three-letter words, but not FBI. Bearing in mind, not MI6. Obviously, MI6 connections via my company, so they missed that out. It says on the left there, we can lay it down and say we are one against this monster. Remember, you've got Monsters Worldwide company that I've linked to this fraud. That's links to Prince Charles, or the King. Don't fall for the many strategies to divide us. Now, this is interesting. In a minute, we'll come to that, actually. Next bit. The greatest accomplishment of the Christian military intelligence operation of the highest level worldwide is that they woke up countless millions of people, but not to the real truth, okay? They're not revealing the fraud. This is key. And they're not focusing on the adrenochrome and the links to the fraud, okay? This is a deliberate withholding of that information so that they can bring in a digital currency system and keep the fraud going and the child trafficking, okay? They're trying to entrap us with these saviours mentioning some of the truth, but not all of it. It's very clear. You need to trust me on this, but more trust the evidence that I'm presenting. That's what I would say. On the right now, this is interesting. Because on my videos, when I've exposing my evidence on my YouTube, for example, I was putting the Fall of the Cabal video, a link to it within the description of my videos, and they've picked up on that and mentioned it here, which suggests that is actually another false flag, okay? And they mention it, and they say the documentaries, The Fall of the Cabal, is a central example of this. The maker of these documentaries is our dear friend Janet Osabard lost her life as the forces of darkness managed to infiltrate her life on the most personal and intimate level and drained her to the point of suicide. But Jeanette heard the clarion call of Q, okay, which is what they're going under for this, and Donald Trump linked to it, etc., and created the world's most powerful documentaries that exposed every aspect of the satanic works of the deep state of the cabal to hundreds of millions of people. Now, I suspect this article was tailored at me to try and draw me in to trusting in Trump, and I've got loads of other evidence in relation to that. But this is very important because we come to this later in the document. We have David Sorensen on there, and we'll look at research in relation to David Sorensen. He supposedly wrote that article, sent to me, remember, by a new politician coming through as part of the reform. I do anticipate we're going to be seeing, as part of their deception, the removal of Keir Starmer and the bringing of Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage, unfortunately, is in the thick of this. He's linked to this international government fraud, and he refused to assist me in exposing it. And instead, when I explained that I had forged bank documents produced by Lloyds Bank within 2 months of me sending him the evidence and him responding saying, "I'm sorry, I can't help you. There's so much stuff going on in the world that's terrible," he then opened accounts with Lloyds Bank. Anyway, moving on. The article here, dated 2016, is by The Guardian. They are also linked to the fraud. Most mainstream media is. They also have fraudulent entity companies, so they will also have the ability to launder money through their accounts as part of this fraud. They are refusing to even respond to me in relation to this, by the way. I did try contacting The Guardian multiple times months ago, and the BBC and Channel 4 and pretty much every mainstream media that I could think of. Anyway, this is article 2016, Growing Up with the Family Inside Anne Hamilton Byrne's Sinister Cult. Cruel and charismatic, Anne Hamilton Byrne was the Australian leader of the Doomsday Cult who thought she was the Messiah. Abigail Hanworthy on the woman behind the family. I've just highlighted some things. On the left there, as leader of the family, the Australian Doomsday Cult, she founded it in the 1960s. She claimed to be Jesus reborn as a woman. On the right there, one of the few female cult leaders in history and apparently one of the cruelest. Hamilton Byrne operated in almost total secrecy over 2 decades, hidden away in the countryside outside Melbourne. The family's motto was unseen and unknown, unheard, and the police acting on information from 2 child escapees raided the cult in 1987. It emerged that over the years, Hamilton Byrne had collected 28 children through bogus adoptions and gifts from followers. The glamorous guru used the same tactic on her adult followers, handpicking them from Melbourne's wealthy professional elite, and with promises of spiritual fulfillment in the 1960s and 1970s when the new age seeking was all the rage. On the right, a few years ago, speculation emerged that WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange had grown up in the family. His hair colour didn't help, possibly his personality. Assange admitted that a man who was his mother's boyfriend in the late 1970s had been a member of the cult. The man had been a sinister presence who had sought to have a certain psychological power over his family, Assange said, and they eventually went on the run from him, but he had never met Hamilton Byrne or had any involvement, I believe, in them, in that side of things. On the left there, talking about the family, preaching a mishmash of Christianity and Eastern mysticism. Okay, this is important. So not Christianity in its correctness, in its entirety, but a mishmash between that and Eastern mysticism, possibly Pharaohan. We'll come to that a little bit later. And apocalyptic prophecy. Okay. She allegedly forced followers, including children, to take dangerous amounts of LSD and other hallucinogenics as part of her prolonged initiation rites. Once they had submitted, she'd dictate every aspect of their lives. Now, I'm getting a lot of evidence now coming in, including from Julia, who supposedly was given way too much medication by her Polish family, Julia Van Dalt, who I suspect is Madeleine McCann. I actually believe she's Madeleine McCann now. There's so much evidence. But I'm getting a lot of evidence from others that pharmaceuticals link into this child trafficking in a huge way. So they appear to have been using pharmaceuticals to suppress the memories of children who are being victimized, potentially even kill those children through overdoses once they've had their way with them. But reading on, it says, by the time the police raid Hamilton Byrne, had broken up the families, destroyed marriages, and left their child victims with lifelong psychological scars. A number of followers tried to kill themselves either during the time in the family or after their escape. Tragically, some succeeded. The cult leader amassed an estimated, and I'll just read on a little bit here, 150 Australian dollars, through property, land, and cash donated by followers. She hid overseas and was eventually arrested in 1993 on relatively minor fraud charges. So this was probably part of the system of fraud, because this relates to that ability to launder money through this criminal system of illegal entity creation. So, okay, I'm going to try and pick some relevant points on this. Now, there is a link through this document to transgenderism, and here's that first link. Chelsea Manning, who we've already mentioned, was what Julian Assange was basing the evidence from. So she gave the information to Julian Assange in relation to the leak. And this is just a bit of information on her. And I do suggest you go and read the full document. But she was a trans woman, okay? But she's got connections to Wales, okay? Which is very important, because Wales is where Companies House was based, okay? And Companies House is where, in Wales, obviously, and Prince of Wales, Charles was the Prince of Wales, okay? And Companies House is creating these fraudulent entity companies through the forgery of the register and the incorporation documents. So we now have a link to this, to Wales. And importantly, on the right here, it says in November 2001, at age 14, Manning and her mother left the US. Now, that is 2 months after the World Trade Center disaster. November 2001, okay? It happened in September 2001. So 2 months after, Chelsea Manning moves to Wales with her mother, and we come on to research later with her mother. You'll see that in the document. They moved to Haverfordwest in Wales, where her mother had a family. Manning attended the town's Tusker Secondary School. His school friend there told Ed Caesar for the Sunday Times that Manning's personality was unique and extremely unique. She's then got connection to somebody called James Kirkpatrick, and they started up a country called Angel Dine, according to this .com. We come to that later in the document, and you see how relevant that is. So anyway, Chelsea Manning, I'm just going to go through this. So researching Companies House, links to Chelsea Manning to a company in Wales that dissolved in 2024 as I'm exposing the fraud. Other appointments were made in 2023. But what they're doing is they're trying to hide this through false dates of births or multiple identities, but they've left enough. It's been silly to leave enough, and probably because they're irrational enough and not thinking straight because of all this, and it's been going on for so long, so they're complacent, that the research all links to the same place and goes back to the same companies. So that's how we can be sure that these records are in relation to the same international government fraud. So anyway, we go through, and you've got various companies that are dissolving, linked to very significant companies in relation to this. Okay, that's just a solicitor, and then the research from that solicitor links into the international government fraud. To first-class company services that links to Jeffrey Epstein and also Rudy, who was the mayor of New York at the time of the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings. It also links to a link to a company called JFK Limited. Now, I suspect the JFK murder was actually in relation to all of this. Okay, and again, it's just showing links to international government fraud. So I'm not going to go into all of that. You can look at this and see all of the connections. Wherever you see certain companies, you know it's linked to the fraud. So Swift Incorporations, for example, or Jordan's Limited, or 788 to 790 Finchley Road, which we have here. This is why I can do this, process this information so quick, because I know the trigger information that can automatically link it to this fraud. And it is very quickly linked all the way through. Here you've got yacht companies, accountancy firms that, again, link into very prominent companies. This is a very important one, Companies Made Simple, because they've actually removed the company name from a document, which is fraud, to try and hide the link to the World Trade Center disaster, the international child trafficking, and the paedophile connection. We've then got the Atara Project Company, and Atara links to just a bit of research on Atara. It's a slightly misspelling of it, but I think this is going to be connected to this. Atara Project, it is. The name has a mysterious quality to it with its spellbinding sound of Hebrew origin. This title means crown. Okay, we're talking about the crown. I've already mentioned the king. Predominantly used as a girl's name, Atara perfectly describes the power your little monarch has over you. So it's a version of mocking the public, making us believe they have criminal power over us, and it is criminal. You've got various companies dissolving. Then you've got links to the prison service. Okay, this is important. Remember, I don't actually believe Julian Assange was fully in prison. I believe that's part of the deception. And later on, hopefully I'll get to show you, we'll see links to actually Belmarsh Prison. And this is just showing, I'm not going to show you all this because we'll be here all day, but you can see the links through to the healthcare services, fraud all the way throughout. It links back to the fraud. Now we're looking at research in relation to Chelsea Manning's mother, who died, according to this, in 2020. So then I show research again, links through to Wales, international government fraud, the Darwin theory of evolution, which we'll come to in a bit as well. That's quite very important, in fact. Waterloo links on the left there. That links to the Freemasons. Bristol Law Company, that features throughout the fraud. Fraudulent entities never been registered correctly throughout. Links to worshipping practices, benevolent funds, the Royal Society for Medicine, so it links into pharmaceuticals, independent school companies. Now these are important because from these companies that then links into the case of Julia Vandalt, the information that led from her, which then obviously links the Madeleine McCann case. And then we have links then from that, okay, we link to the Child Safe International. So, and what I'm finding is there's a lot of inversion. So the Freemasons appear to be trying to make it look as though they're doing good things, but it's actually the opposite. Okay, so they're inverting everything. And from that we have fraud throughout again. What's that connection? So the same address that's used, they're using the same addresses throughout the fraud, so we can then link it to the fraud. Child Whispering Limited. Sounds quite nefarious, doesn't it? Again, linked to the fraud. Tasty Media. Lots of media companies. Fraudulent companies. People for Research. These are all linked. And then you've got Swift Incorporations and Jordan's case. They're the same two companies that started the company where I was part of, where they removed me for refusing to file the forged documents. And now we have a link to the police. Okay, and this is very quick links. Okay, don't forget, these are not every screenshot is one company. Several relate to the same company, and then we're just moving on to a linked connection through it. And here we are. We have the Police Children's Fund that then links to, and we've got links here to Hampshire Constabulary. This is important for the reasons I've mentioned in part 1, and to Waterloo. So Freemason connections in the fraud. Police Superintendents Association. With you can see movement of names, appointments made in April 2024. As I'm exposing the fraud, that's a police officer according to this. Links to the fraud throughout. Did I miss a bit here? There was a bit I was going to mention. Yeah, so just showed before that we had a link to Avon and Somerset Constabulary Benevolent Fund. Okay, and look when this appointment was made. They were appointed before the World Trade Center disaster, and then three months after the World Trade Center disaster, they resigned. It's all linked into the World Trade Center disaster to eventually lead to full digital currency control, but importantly, a fake war on terror to create conflict, I believe, between different faith groups and ultimately lead to the complete removal of all religions and bring in the Luciferian occult system to potentially end life completely on the planet. I mean, they may be doing that at any point anyway with this, but they need to realise if they carry on as they are, then they're lost forever. And this is just showing various links into my previous fraud research. So you've got Halliwell's that's just in the process of dissolving, I believe. It's linked to the fraud via that address. Sorry, yeah, it's in liquidation. I'm not going to focus too much on here. So this is coming, remember, from Chelsea Manning's mum's research. We're still in that. And on the document, you'll see I've got a green highlighted box when we're onto a new bit of evidence. So then we've got a link to Rochdale, which is a golf club which allows that, and it's fraudulent, so it will allow money to be laundered through. Of course, we've got the Rochdale child trafficking concerns that's been in the news over the last couple of years, I believe. Just moving on here. And then we've got links through to Dorset again via Bevan Britain. I mean, there's links all the way back to Dorset, all the way through this. That links to Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council, fraud throughout. Winkworth Sherwood is then shown. That's important because that links to the HS2 railway link. So they'll be defrauding the public through this system of fraud using the HS2 railway link. Okay, and saying we're paying a certain amount of money is going into it, but it'll be vastly more because remember the banks actually are being allowed to produce forged bank documents to defraud the public. Now we have drug companies linked to it. Okay, then this gives them the ability to then pump contributions through a false suggestion they're trying to resolve the drug problem when they're actually part of it. And we'll come to that later. And again, fraudulent entity companies linked to the fraud throughout. Now we have a Hampstead connection. Remember the Hampstead child abuse inquiry. And you'll find the same companies that connect to Ricky Dearman link into all of this evidence. Okay, very quickly. Then you've got the London Diocesan Board. So we now have religious links. Christianity has been completely infiltrated. In fact, all religions have been infiltrated by the Freemasons as part of this fraud. And again, fraudulent entity companies. Then we have alcohol research. So what they're doing is creating the problem through the availability of the alcohol, making it try and seem as though they're doing something and defrauding the general public through this incorporation fraud and the taxation system. And interestingly, on that company, you have a person Fleming surname and Owen surname. Now, you've got, obviously, the Fleming family linked to my company, but you've also got Owens and Porter and someone called Stephen Owen. Now, I'm finding those two names are coming up through this quite a lot. So there's probably a connection there in the family. And on that incorporation document, you have Bates, Wells and Braithwaite, which is the same company that links to the Madeleine McCann case, Keir Starmer, linking him to it. So then we've got research in relation to James Kirkpatrick. Remember, we linked him to Chelsea Manning via that research. So we've got links to the fraud all the way through. It's all the way through this. Swift Incorporations, Jordan's again. Monster Worldwide, we mentioned that earlier, didn't we? Maybe in this part one. So here we are again. We now have a link to Monster Worldwide, and I believe that links into the research regarding King Charles. Monster Worldwide. You may have all seen the drink Monster. If you look at a video on the symbolism within that, you'll see that links to satanic elements of what we're seeing here. On the right here, we've now got a link to an address that features right the way throughout the fraud and very closely to my wife's family as well, actually. And you'll see some very close connections to that later. And here we have Portsmouth companies, fraud throughout, Portsmouth Naval Base. That then, I believe, links back into Donna Jones that we've talked about in part one. Then you've got housing, again, real estate companies linked to this fraud, but huge ones, Southern Housing Group Limited. Okay, and they are Swift Incorporations and Jordans, so all fraudulent, should never have been allowed to carry on. And then via one of the companies we were just looking at, you then go into the Masons, so Masons Secretarial, fraud again. And you can see that the Pinsent Masons here, the links to it had already linked to the World Trade Center disaster and to David Cameron and to my previous research of the London Law Agency, which is fraudulent. And it all links back in. Then we have links. Remember the company name that they'd started. So who was it? Chelsea Manning and Fitzpatrick, was it? The other guy? They'd been involved in the company. When you search that company name, it brings up this, although there's one letter difference. So I suggest it's still going to be linked. And this then links into this person, okay, who is a famous person, and you can read all of this, who had links to Hollywood. So they were running for the local authority in Hollywood. Remember, we have links to Hollywood from my company via Ian Fleming, and we're all seeing at the moment, P. Diddy, for example, there's going to be links to adrenochrome through that, and you can see links to Hollywood and adrenochrome, the fluid taken from these poor children in relation to all of this fraud, which is a massive part of this. So here's Angeline, who comes up when you research that company, and you'll see why this becomes relevant. There's a fairly recent, an article in 2022 in relation to Angeline. So she was a model. And anyway, when you look at the evidence, she was married very briefly to somebody called Michael Strauss. Okay, so then when you research Michael Strauss, he becomes very significant. He served as a chairman of Strauss Elite from 1975 until 2001, the time of the World Trade Center disaster. Okay, 1975 is when supposedly MK Ultra was ceased, the experimentation, but it looks as though it continued under MK search, linking to David Cameron. So Michael Strauss appears to be the same person, was a German business magnate and industrialist who served as chairman of Strauss Elite from 1975 to 2001. And when you research Strauss Elite, in fact, I think we'll do let's do part 3. Let's go on to part 3, because that's half an hour. God bless.